Welcome to the perfect place to put a practice podcast by Scott McDonald and DrDemographics.com, the best source of demographic, psychographic, and marketing information for professionals.
This episode of the Dr. Demographics podcast is brought to you by ConvertSocial.ai. For the past several years, ConvertSocial.ai has helped us post and promote this very podcast. Likely many of you found it and are listening to it due to the great work of the team at ConvertSocial.ai. Look, let's be honest. Most doctors struggle with staying consistent with their social media. They always start with great intentions, but things get busy and the social media for the practice gets forgotten. ConvertSocial.ai solves that consistency problem, and they do it at a price that's likely less than you're paying for Post-it notes each month for your office. Do yourself a favor. Solve your social media problems by going to ConvertSocial.ai and let them know that Dr. Demographics sent you. That's ConvertSocial.ai.
Hello, this is Scott McDonald of Dr. Demographics, and today I want to talk to you about the competition radii that exists around any given practice area. Now, in the short run, what I'm talking about is people want to know how many competitors there should be in any distance around your practice site you're considering. I got to ask this question, almost every week, but for your purposes, I was asked this just recently because there is a lot of misunderstanding on the topic of, are there too many competitors in any given radius around a practice? Well, the doctor in question said, look, I've got a site that I'm considering. I put money down on the building, and I want to know, because a new competitor is threatening to open in that very near site, should I scrap the deal and find some other place, or can I proceed with this location? Now, the location is a good one. I will say it has enough visibility and accessibility. The price is about right. And naturally, there are those who are competitors who are thinking, well, maybe we ought to put our practice there. It's a good draw. What I'm telling you is this: should you get rid of your idea and go somewhere else because there is a competitor nearby? The answer is no. If the site is good, there are lots of considerations about theory that you have to understand. Now, this goes back to marketing theory, and I'll discuss that in just a second. But the long and the short of it is, you cannot make decisions based upon what other people are going to do. In the case that I just went through, it's entirely possible that someone may get right up to the deadline and pull out and not decide to do it. Or they may not be precisely in the same market that you are. I mean, they may offer a service that would be so significantly different, you have to think about, I don't know, are we really competitors or not? So I want to deal with these issues. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is there is no metric to say we've got to have so many doctors of our type within the radius. Life isn't like that. So, for example, I've worked with general dentists for a long time, and I've found that, generally speaking, you can look at one dental practice per 1,400 residents and say that's about average. That doesn't mean that that's good or bad. It just simply is what other people are finding. And if you are playing the odds and doing what the norm would suggest, well, that's fine. But the reality is, so many times when I've looked at these practice sites to say, are they really in competition or not, we find out they're not in competition at all. So, for example, in the case of a dentist, it may be a general dentist who is also providing specialty services like endodontics or orthodontics in a general practice setting. Therefore, competitors are not really competitors because they're offering a different marketing mix. Now, I'll explain a marketing mix for a second. If you look at a marketing mix, there are 4 elements: product, price, place, and promotion. When I say that they may not be offering exactly the same thing, I'm saying the services offered in any given office space may be quite unique. The product, or in other words, the range of services that are being offered, are not necessarily apples and oranges. An endodontist, an orthodontist, and an oral surgeon are offering vastly different services. So you cannot say, are they in competition? They really are not. But if you talk about price, that's sometimes an interesting bugaboo. How fees are collected, how much they're charging for any particular service, is a manifestation of the price of the practice or the price of the services. The place actually is also unique, because if a site has excellent parking or visibility or accessibility, it's got several factors that make it quite different than a competitor will. Even practices that are just a block away may be really quite different. I have therefore concluded that you have to match exactly the product, price, and place and compare them to say, are they really in competition? And most of the time, they're not. Lastly, promotion is the 4th P of the marketing mix. Promotion is how a site or service is advertised, but it also goes into what kinds of insurance you accept and the reimbursement rates. Those can be quite different as well. So while there may be a competitor who's geographically very close to your office location, it is hardly ever a reason to say, no, we're not going to go with that, if the other factors in the marketing mix are favorable. And I say that because I mentioned earlier visibility of the site. If you've got a very good visible office, people are traveling by it all the time, and the price of that practice, the lease or the purchase price of the physical plant, makes a big difference. What I'm saying is you have to have all 4 elements of product, price, place, and promotion that are almost identical to have a competitor be a reason for you not to go to a location. Now, you may say, well, what if there are a lot of people in my profession in that site? I know this may sound counterintuitive, but that can be a very positive indicator that the site has potential for your type of office. If you get into that place that you have no competitors and there's nobody else in the neighborhood who would be considered as a competitor, there might be something. In fact, I'd even say there probably is something wrong with the site itself. You therefore probably should look for some other location. No competition is not a good thing either. Now, I say that because I was surprised when I first started doing demographics for doctors, how many of them became, well, extremely worried that there was somebody who was going to take patients from them. I was surprised in doing some deeper research how rarely that really happens if you consider those 4 elements of the marketing mix. Most of the time, they are offering something different than you. When we're looking at you, who you are, there is going to be a natural proclivity for people to choose you and your office that may be ignored by people who don't understand the marketing mix. As an example, I once worked with a practice that was very, very concerned that there were other doctors serving the Armenian population. Now, he himself was Armenian, and if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. But it is false to assume that just because there are other people offering similar but not exact services to a similar but not exactly the same population matters a lot. Now, this doctor found there was a real attraction to him being active in the Armenian church where he went. It was a great place for him to meet people and for people to decide that they wanted to use his services. That became such an asset to him in the practice that it was funny, even though there was another Armenian doctor of a similar practice type, they were still offering subtle differences because one of those doctors was older and one was younger. Just the idea that they would have a different marketing mix that would serve a patient base matters a lot. So therefore, I say it doesn't matter nearly as much as you might think that you have a competitor within the neighborhood. As I mentioned before, that can be a positive factor. They also forget the facts that some doctors are different than their competitors or there are other people who are in the neighborhood. And that might matter a great deal on which doctor patients will choose. Hours of operation are often ignored. One of these doctors in this Armenian area really liked to work at night. And one did not want to have any partners at all. He wanted to do everything himself. And those things are significant benefit statements about the practice. So, if you are considering getting into a location and you want to find out how many patients there are in the patient base and its potential, is it growing or is it shrinking? What's the median household income? What's the educational attainment level of that population? Doctor Demographics is where you get those facts with the practice profile analysis. In other words, it's a practice site viability report. Now, if you have the facts, we can make recommendations on whether we think, from a marketing standpoint, it's a good idea or not. And this does not cost you very much money. On the other hand, if you're just guessing and doing it by gut reaction, you're probably going to make a mistake and you'll regret it later. With that in mind, just remember how you promote the practice matters as much as what you're offering. And that may be a significant benefit to what you're going to do. Lastly, there are different categories of patients. They want and need different things. What I'm saying is, don't assume that if you are a dermatologist, let's say, that you're going to offer dermatology in exactly the same way as everybody else. It's likely you will not. So consider for a minute what it is you offer and who you are and why people would want to come to you. You'll often find strengths and maybe a few weaknesses that matter to people. That is ultimately why I don't recommend you run away screaming into the night saying the area is too crowded. It's probably not. But we can answer that question at Dr. Demographics. The practice site viability report is what you want, and we can help you figure out if this is, in fact, the best place to put a practice. Give us a call or visit us at drdemographics.com. and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching.